Happy birthday to you.
Go, baby. Go. Blow.
Yay! May God bless you.
Following the story since March 3rd, when Markayla Johnson, her 4-year-old daughter Miracle, and her 7-month-old son Messiah were reported missing out of Northeast Charlotte. Well, nearly 2 weeks later, Charlotte-Mecklenburg police found their remains inside their apartment complex.
I say, I miss my baby. I miss my grandkids. She was a good person, and everybody knows Kayla would do anything for you. She didn't deserve this.
Markayla Johnson was a 22-year-old mother of 2, living a quiet life in Charlotte, North Carolina. To those who knew her, she was protective, practical, and fiercely dedicated to her children. So when her phone went silent and her social media accounts suddenly turned cold, alarm bells rang, but not loudly enough. What no one knew was that a 34-year-old man, recently released from prison and with a history of violence, had quietly moved into her home. The man was charming, persuasive, and manipulative. He exploited her trust, then used digital tools to cover his tracks. For weeks, messages continued from Markayla's phone. Her voice was replaced with carefully crafted lies. To friends and family, everything seemed normal, but the truth was buried behind a locked door, a trail of deleted messages, and a pattern of behavior too disturbing to ignore. When the silence stretched too long, and the excuses stopped making sense, a family member pushed for answers. That's when the facade began to crack, and the full extent of what had happened inside Markayla's home began to surface. This documentary peels back the layers of one of the most chilling disappearance cases in recent memory. It reveals how digital deception delayed discovery, how a known offender evaded suspicion, and how investigators slowly pieced together the horrifying truth. Through police records, text messages, and eyewitness accounts, the story unfolds with clinical precision. No dramatics, just facts. It's a case that forces uncomfortable questions. How did a repeat offender gain access to a vulnerable family? Why did it take so long for anyone to notice? And when the truth came out, what was left to uncover? If you're captivated by real crime stories that peel back the layers of truth, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us as we uncover real cases, raise awareness, and give a voice to the voiceless. Before we dive into today's story, we want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? And how do you feel as the story unfolds? Welcome to Deadly Crime Unmasked, the show where we expose the shocking crimes that rip through communities and the chilling secrets lurking behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Don't forget to subscribe and activate notifications. You won't want to miss the gripping story that's coming up. Now, let's dive in. Markayla Johnson was living in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Prior to the events leading up to her disappearance, she was primarily known as a mother to 2 young children. Her daughter Miracle, who was 4 years old, and her infant son Messiah, just 7 months old. Her life revolved around her children and the responsibilities of parenting at a young age. There is no public record indicating that Markayla was involved in any criminal activity or faced any significant legal issues before the events in Charlotte. Her life, as far as community records show, was focused on raising her children and maintaining a stable home environment. Myrtle Beach, where Markayla lived for the early years of her children's lives, is a city known for tourism and seasonal employment. Residents often face economic challenges, with many working multiple jobs or in service-related industries to support their families. It is plausible that Markayla's life was shaped by these economic conditions, which could have influenced her decisions regarding housing, employment, and future opportunities. There are no reports suggesting she had stable employment during this time, which is common among young mothers balancing childcare responsibilities. However, she maintained communication with family members in Myrtle Beach, who were later involved in reporting her missing when contact was lost. The exact timeline of Markayla's decision to relocate from Myrtle Beach to Charlotte, North Carolina, has been pieced together through law enforcement records and interviews with family and acquaintances. By late 2023, Markayla had made arrangements to move to Charlotte with her 2 children. This decision was reportedly influenced by her relationship with a man named Benjamin Joseph Taylor. Taylor, 34 years old, had a significant criminal record and was recently released from prison prior to moving into Markayla's new residence. The circumstances surrounding their meeting and the development of their relationship are not fully documented, but available information indicates that Markayla met Taylor online through digital platforms that connect individuals. This initial contact eventually led to Taylor moving into the Charlotte home where Markayla was living with her children. Upon arrival in Charlotte, Markayla moved into an apartment located at 3300 block of Orchard Trace Lane. This residence would later become the crime scene. Family members indicated that communication with her became less frequent shortly after her relocation. While this was initially attributed to challenges of adjusting to a new environment, there were immediate signs of Taylor exerting influence and control. Taylor's criminal record reveals a long pattern of offenses. Public records and police statements show that he had been in and out of prison multiple times. His charges range from drug trafficking to assault. He had previously served time for a shooting incident in 2011 and was released from prison not long before meeting Markayla. His past included multiple restraining orders filed by other women and a documented history of domestic violence, though none of those charges resulted in long-term convictions. Despite this, Taylor was able to present himself as a rehabilitated man. In digital communication with Markayla, he appeared supportive and caring. However, once they began living together, neighbors noted frequent disturbances from the apartment. Witnesses reported loud arguments, banging noises, and increased foot traffic at all hours. These incidents were not reported to police at the time, which investigators later determined allowed Taylor to avoid early detection. As Markayla became more isolated, Taylor's control increased. Over the next several days, family members attempted to reach her via phone calls, text messages, and social media platforms. Initially, there was no major alarm as digital activity continued from her personal accounts. Posts appeared on her Facebook and Instagram profiles. Texts were occasionally sent from her number to family members, assuring them that she was safe and simply overwhelmed with responsibilities. However, these messages began to appear inconsistent in tone and style, raising quiet suspicion among relatives. Family members later told investigators that some of the messages seemed out of character for Markayla. For example, she stopped using common slang or expressions she typically used in previous conversations. Some messages appeared unusually brief or vague. Others seemed to avoid answering specific questions. Despite these red flags, there was no immediate report filed. The illusion of communication created the false sense that Markayla and her children were still safe. According to Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, CMPD, records, it wasn't until March 3, 2024, nearly 7 weeks after the last known contact, that a missing persons report was officially filed. Between mid-January and early March, family members conducted their own search efforts. The search began informally, with repeated calls and online check-ins. Family members reached out to mutual friends, neighbors, and anyone who might have seen Markayla or her children in recent days. Relatives made several visits to Markayla's residence, located in the Orchard Trace Lane apartment complex. On each visit, no one answered the door. From the outside, there was no sign of disturbance. Her car was parked outside. Windows were intact. No visible signs of forced entry or struggle. During these visits, family members reported an unusual odor in the hallway. Initially, they assumed it might be coming from trash, plumbing, or a neighboring unit. However, the smell worsened over time. Neighbors in the building also noticed the odor and voiced concerns, but no one could confirm the source. Despite increasing suspicion, the lack of forced entry, ongoing social media activity, and text responses delayed a formal police investigation. Digital traces of Markayla's presence gave the illusion that she was still alive, likely contributing to law enforcement's initial decision not to force entry into the unit. As part of their effort to locate her, the family contacted local hospitals and jails. No records of her admission or arrest were found. Markayla's financial accounts showed no recent activity, which added to the growing concern. There were no recent ATM withdrawals, debit purchases, or electronic payments associated with her usual habits. The children, 4-year-old Miracle and 7-month-old Messiah, also showed no trace of presence in public records. There were no visits to local clinics, daycare facilities, or preschools. This led the family to believe that if Markayla had left voluntarily, she had done so without accessing any public services. As February progressed, the concern intensified. Family members began to document all of their observations and suspicions, compiling a log of failed attempts to reach her, unusual messages, and the growing smell of her apartment. They returned to the complex several times, but were unsuccessful in gaining access to the unit. Finally, on March 3, 2024, the family filed a formal missing persons report with CMPD. At this point, officers took the case under investigation. A welfare check was requested, but again, no one answered the door. CMPD officers made several attempts to contact Markayla directly. After repeated failed attempts, and based on the information provided by the family, including suspicions about the man she had recently moved in with, a search warrant was obtained. 12 days later, on March 15, 2024, officers with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department executed a search warrant at the residence of Markayla Johnson's apartment. The warrant was issued after relatives reported Markayla and her 2 children missing. Family members have been unable to reach her since late January and grew increasingly suspicious when responses to texts and posts on social media seemed inconsistent and impersonal. Upon entering the unit, officers encountered a strong, foul odor consistent with advanced decomposition. The apartment itself showed no immediate signs of forced entry or struggle. Furniture remained undisturbed. However, investigators immediately noted that the air inside the unit was unusually stale, and the smell intensified as they approached one of the bedroom closets. Inside that closet, law enforcement discovered a large black plastic storage bin. The container was sealed shut with duct tape and had layers of plastic wrap around it. Upon removing the tape and opening the lid, investigators found the body of a deceased adult female, later confirmed to be Markayla Johnson. Her body was folded into the container in a position indicating it had been forcefully compressed to fit. Her state of decomposition suggested she had been dead for several weeks. There were no visible gunshot wounds or lacerations. The autopsy focused on toxicology to determine the cause of death. Toxicology analysis revealed that Markayla died from acute fentanyl toxicity. The levels of fentanyl found in her system were consistent with a fatal overdose. No other significant physical trauma was reported that would suggest she died from external injuries. The second child, Miracle's body, was found in a gym bag located in the trunk of a vehicle associated with the apartment. The car had reportedly not been moved for several days. Her remains also showed signs of decomposition. Additionally, the autopsy revealed bruising on the arms and upper torso. These bruises were consistent with grip marks, suggesting she had been forcibly restrained. A phone charging cord was tied around her wrists. There were no signs of gunshot or stab wounds. There were no signs of defensive wounds, which suggested she may have been incapacitated prior to death. Toxicology results showed the presence of fentanyl in a fatal concentration. No other narcotics or alcohol were detected. The body of the 7-month-old Messiah was located in a separate gym bag, also inside the trunk of the same vehicle where Miracle was found. The infant's body was wrapped in multiple layers of clothing and blankets. The medical examiner noted that the wrapping could have contributed to heat retention, but decomposition was still moderate due to external temperatures. The combination of fentanyl and other sedatives was determined to be toxic and fatal to a child of that age and weight. While the other substances might not have caused death independently, they likely contributed to respiratory failure when combined with fentanyl. By the time the bodies of Markayla Johnson and her 2 children were discovered, Benjamin Joseph Taylor was already gone. Law enforcement began tracking him immediately after the gruesome findings inside the Charlotte apartment and the nearby vehicle. His departure was not impulsive. Evidence showed he had planned to leave the state days before the discovery, suggesting a premeditated exit strategy designed to avoid immediate detection. Surveillance data and digital forensics revealed that Taylor began his departure from Charlotte shortly after the last confirmed sighting of Markayla in late January. He used Markayla's vehicle, a white Dodge Charger, and traveled west. Along the way, he avoided major highways and toll roads where license plate readers were heavily concentrated. Investigators believe this was an intentional effort to reduce traceability. Phone records and credit card activity showed no use after early March, consistent with someone attempting to disappear. Authorities suspect he used cash and burner phones during the trip. A search of Taylor's criminal history revealed prior convictions for violent crimes and drug offenses in multiple states. His previous incarcerations had given him knowledge of law enforcement tactics, which made him more difficult to track. By mid-March, the U.S. Marshals Service joined the investigation. They coordinated with law enforcement agencies across multiple states. An alert was issued nationwide, and Taylor was placed on a federal fugitive list. His last known communication with anyone was traced to an area near Imperial County, California, a rural region less than 20 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border. On March 16, 2024, Taylor was located and arrested in Imperial County. He was found hiding inside an abandoned RV trailer on private farmland. The vehicle was situated just off a county road, surrounded by desert. Local deputies, acting on a tip received by the U.S. Marshals, conducted a brief surveillance operation before moving in. Taylor did not resist arrest. At the time of his arrest, he was in possession of several fake identification cards, over $3,000 in cash, and a backpack containing personal items and phone accessories. One of the IDs bore his photo but listed a different name and date of birth. The arresting officers noted that Taylor appeared unkempt and had signs of sleeping rough, including minor injuries and insect bites. After his capture, Taylor was transported to the Imperial County Jail for initial processing. He was held without bond while awaiting extradition proceedings. During questioning, Taylor declined to speak without legal representation and gave no statement regarding the whereabouts of Markayla Johnson or her children. However, by then, CMPD officers in Charlotte had already located the bodies, and the forensic results were being finalized. The extradition process was initiated within 48 hours of his arrest. North Carolina authorities submitted the required paperwork, and a judge approved the order. Upon arrival in Charlotte, Taylor was transferred to the Mecklenburg County Detention Center to face charges. He was placed in solitary confinement due to the high-profile nature of the case and the severity of the charges. His first court appearance in North Carolina occurred on March 25, 2024. During the hearing, a Mecklenburg County judge formally read the charges against him: 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of concealment of death. Taylor was denied bond. Following the initial hearing, the Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office filed a notice of intent to seek the death penalty. Under North Carolina law, a capital murder case can qualify for the death penalty if one or more statutory aggravating factors are present. In this case, prosecutors cited multiple aggravating factors, including the murder of more than one person, the murder of a child under the age of 13, the particularly heinous, atrocious, or cruel nature of the crimes, the use of a controlled substance as a method of murder, fentanyl poisoning. A Rule 24 hearing, required by North Carolina law to determine whether the prosecution may pursue the death penalty, was scheduled and held in April 2024. At this hearing, the district attorney's office presented its justification for pursuing capital punishment. The defense did not contest the eligibility, and the presiding judge ruled that the case would proceed as a capital murder trial. Taylor was assigned a public defender with experience in capital cases. The defense team requested a psychiatric evaluation to assess Taylor's mental state at the time of the murders and his competence to stand trial. The court ordered the evaluation, and Taylor was found competent to proceed. The defense team also indicated its intention to raise possible mitigating factors, including Taylor's mental health history and prior incarceration. Pre-trial motions began in May 2024. These included requests for suppression of certain evidence, change of venue due to extensive media coverage, and separate trials for the different murder charges. The court denied the motion for a change of venue, citing the ability to find impartial jurors within Mecklenburg County. The motion to suppress digital evidence, including messages sent from Markayla's phone after her death, was also denied. As of the latest court proceedings, a trial date has been set for early 2025. Jury selection is expected to take several weeks due to the capital nature of the case. If convicted on any of the murder charges, Taylor faces two possible sentences: life in prison without the possibility of parole, or death by lethal injection. If the jury delivers a guilty verdict, the trial will move to a penalty phase to determine sentencing. Taylor remains in custody without bond. Following the police announcement, members of Markayla Johnson's family issued several public statements. These were provided through news interviews, Facebook posts, and a community vigil organized near her former home in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Her grandmother told local media that Markayla had left South Carolina in late 2023 to start a new life in Charlotte. She confirmed that the family became concerned after weeks of no communication, but they initially believed Markayla had simply become busy. When texts continued to come from her number and occasional updates appeared on her social media accounts, they assumed she was fine. Her cousin stated in a televised interview that those digital interactions were later determined to have been managed by Benjamin Taylor after murders had occurred. Markayla's mother was not present for any of the interviews, but issued a written statement read aloud by a family spokesperson. In it, she described the situation as a nightmare orchestrated by a dangerous individual who gained trust and used it as a weapon. The family said they would not rest until Taylor received the maximum sentence allowable by law. Several extended family members confirmed they had previously voiced concerns about Markayla's decision to relocate and live with a man she had met online. However, they admitted there was little they could do legally to stop the move. None of them had met Benjamin Taylor before the murders. Across social media, the case received national attention. Multiple posts with the hashtag Justice for Markayla gained traction on Twitter and Facebook. Instagram profiles shared photos of the victims, particularly 4-year-old Miracle in a birthday dress, and called for legislative reforms surrounding parole and online relationship safety. True crime discussion forums analyzed details released in the arrest affidavit. Commenters noted Taylor's extensive criminal record, including drug charges, fraud, and assault, and questioned how a man with such a background had been able to leave his state unsupervised. Online petitions calling for prosecutors to seek the death penalty reached over 20,000 signatures within 72 hours. Several online fundraisers also emerged, claiming to support funeral costs or legal fees. Police later advised the public to verify the legitimacy of any donation pages, as some were reported as scams. In Charlotte, community leaders, clergy members, and local officials addressed the public's concerns during a town hall held on March 20th. The event, hosted by the Orchard Trace Neighborhood Watch Committee, focused on the gaps in housing security and the importance of tenant background checks. The property management company that oversees the apartment complex declined to attend. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg School District released a short statement acknowledging the death of one of their enrolled students. Miracle Johnson was registered in the district's pre-K program. Counselors were made available at nearby schools for students who asked questions about the incident. Religious institutions in both Charlotte and Myrtle Beach held candlelight vigils in memory of the victims. These events were not focused on mourning, but rather aimed at increasing community awareness of domestic threats and encouraging others to speak up when something seems off. In Myrtle Beach, where Markayla was originally from, her former high school organized a moment of silence. A local women's shelter held an information session about online dating safety, emphasizing how manipulation and coercion can develop quickly when there's a power imbalance. If this story gripped your heart and left you questioning the truth, don't forget to hit that like button and share with others who need to hear it. For more chilling true crime stories that dive deep into the mysteries behind these tragedies, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest updates, investigations, and thought-provoking discussions. Thank you for being part of this journey with us as we uncover the truth and seek justice. Together, we can make a difference. Stay safe, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next one.